Hey, everybody. Show's getting started in just a second, but before we roll into it, I wanted to let you all know that Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything sports betting, and we're so lucky to have them as a partner. They've got every stat, every matchup breakdown, even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games, and they've got the largest catalog of odds anywhere: football, baseball, hockey, basketball. They've got political props, and when the game's over, you can head to the online casino through Bet Online, get down on some blackjack, some poker, unwind with one of over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. Bet Online. The game starts here. What's happening, everybody? Welcome to Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. I'm Dan Besbris, and today we're talking about the fact that my voice is shot once again, but also the toughest decisions you'll be making in the third round of your fantasy draft. Please, before you do anything else, subscribe. That is paramount. That is tantamount? I don't think I'm using that right. Hit the like button if you're watching the video. If you're after the fact, 5-star reviews go a really, really long way this time of year. There are a great percentage of you that haven't done that yet. And so I really do need your help on that one. Those 5-star reviews on Apple, on Spotify, they help move everything up the board. And that's what we need right now, because this is when folks are looking for their stuff. And I still want to make sure everybody that's trying to figure out where the hell did Dan go can actually figure that out. Today's third round ADP Battles episode is going to involve, I believe, 7, which does indeed cover more than 12 players. I'm aware of that. But there's sort of a little bit of wiggle room on the front and back end. And this is probably the last one of these we're going to do, because once you get to the fourth round, the ADPs are jumping all over the place. And you're no longer debating, oh, this guy or this guy. You're sort of debating like this guy versus these 4 other guys. And so there's no reason to do a show on that, because effectively at that point, I'm just like doing a made-up mock draft. There are a ton of values in the third round, as there often are. Although I'll say this year, I think the second round is a little bit less awful than usual. But despite the fact that there are values, you're still going to be debating between players. So who should you take when debating between 2 players with similar ADPs? We're using Yahoo's Board 3 and ADP data to get whatever we need going on today's episode. This discussion is indeed largely geared more towards the head-to-head players, because like 90-something% of you are playing a head-to-head. But fear not, we will toss in some games cap theory as we go, which is typically more the roto side, but you might have some games cap head-to-head leagues rolling as well, and you'll have kind of a similar thought there, with the big discrepancy being games cap head-to-head, you still have to worry about whether or not the players are there for your fantasy playoffs. Games cap roto, it doesn't matter at all when games are missed. First battle on the board, LeBron James or De'Aaron Fox. This is basically the front end of the third round right now. I know LeBron's ADP is 23.8, but we've seen him go at about 25 in most of the drafts we've been doing lately. De'Aaron Fox is right there in that same mix. These guys often go with the Giannis pairing team, but if they don't, and you're debating between LeBron and De'Aaron Fox, what you're looking at here is what is the trajectory for each player. LeBron was number 18 on a per game basis last year. Fox was number 24. So LeBron has a little bit of an edge there when you're going season over season. Fox played 3 more games than LeBron last year, which brought their totals value very tight to one another. So Fox certainly from an age and durability standpoint gets the big edge in that one. From the trajectory standpoint, LeBron played 35 minutes a game last year, which was high, but not super unusually high. I think the Lakers would love to keep him a little bit lower, but remember, they tried to put him on a minutes cap early in the season, and it didn't work. He played like 32 minutes for a couple of days, and then boom, back up into this 36 range where he pretty much always wants to be and is. And so I don't think the minutes necessarily trend down for LeBron. I don't think the activity trends down all that much. What I am worried about with LeBron is, can he really shoot 54% from the field again? Because so much of that was built on a 40+% three-point shooting season. And if that erodes on a team that is now supposedly taking more three-pointers, although I mean, LeBron is so effective when he's going to the rack. Does his field goal percent take a hit? Does he drop off a little bit that way? With De'Aaron Fox, there's two trajectory things that I am a little bit worried about. Number one is DeMar DeRozan. Fox took 21 shots a game last season. Getting back up to that mark with a third guy that demands the basketball is going to be a little bit complicated. I don't think it'd be that nuts to assume that Fox gets up to like 19 and some odd shots. So we're not talking about a drop from 21 to 17 or something like that, but just a little bit going back into that main bucket for DeMar to grab a hold of is enough to knock him down a little bit. On top of the fact that Fox went on a steals run for the freaking ages down the stretch last year. Final 2 months of the season, Fox was averaging 2.3 steals per game. It was, in my mind, an unsustainably high number that was right up there with Alex Caruso and then like Matisse Thybulle and Scottie Pippen playing for a team where no one actually had to play traditional defense. I mean, in a weird twist, Jaren Jackson Jr. was averaging almost 2 steals a game over that stretch. So weird stuff was happening. 2.3 steals is crazy. Fox is not going to average 2 to 2.3 steals a game this year. If he gets back up to 2, obviously that's a huge win. But I think you have to assume that that number comes down a little bit. 1.8, something like that. Something very high still, but not out of the roof crazy high like it was late last year. Put those two things together, the arrival of DeMar, the likelihood that steals maybe come back to earth a little, and Fox, in my opinion, takes a slightly larger hit season over season than does LeBron. So Dan's choice is, despite the age, LeBron James. But this one was a close one. Next battle, and this one got easier as of last night, so kind of a thing. Tyrese Maxey versus Paul George. ADPs are pretty close. Paul George at 29.4, Maxey at 29 on the nose. These are likely to separate over the coming days because Paul George was diagnosed with a hyperextended knee late last evening. I didn't have a chance to redo everything on the board here for today's show. So this one's a pretty easy one. Paul George starting the season hurt. Like the odds that he plays on opening night, I think, are extraordinarily slow because basketball is 1 week from today. And you guys know how I feel about guys that are injured to start the year. I pretty much don't touch them at all. Now, I don't think this is going to be a thing that holds PG out for a super long time. But we also got news earlier yesterday, even before he suffered an actual injury, was that PG and Joel Embiid are likely to sit out half of pretty much every back-to-back all season long. Meaning, the best case scenario for those guys is about 68 to 70 ball games. Most teams have about a dozen back-to-backs. And now you set the max a couple games lower than that. And so a great health year for Paul George is like 68 ball games now. A great health year. For Maxi, a great health year is 82. I don't think he's going to be taking games off unless he's actually hurt. And so for this one, like, even if I think Paul George has a little bit of an edge on the per game side, and I think he does when both of those dudes are in there, the odds are that Maxi plays probably double-digit more games than Paul George. And I would say at least 5. I know the PG beat him last year by 4 games played, but that's just not happening this year. Maxi's going to try to get into the mid to high 70s. Paul George is going to try to get into the mid to high 60s. And so unless Maxi suffers a significant injury, knock on wood, we hope that doesn't happen, guys that are separated only by 5, 6, 7 slots or whatever we think these guys will be separated by this year, you got to go with the dude who's going to has a much higher probability. Obviously, I can't predict the future, but we can try, of being healthy, and that is Tyrese Maxey. I think you got to go that way. You don't even really have to go beyond the health when debating this particular battle. Alperen Sengun and Lauri Markkanen are the next one. Markkanen, Lowry was number 13 last year, 23 points per game, 8 boards, 2 assists, a steal, half a block, 3 threes on a 48-90 set of splits. Absolute monster on the efficiency scale. Also just 1.4 turnovers per game. But sat down the stretch because his team was terrible. Alperen Şengün played 63 games last year because of an injury, not because of any kind of shutdown, averaging 21, 9, and 5 with 1.2 steals, 0.7 blocks, 53.5% from the field, just 69% at the free throw line, and certainly a higher turnover rate. If you are, as many head-to-head players are, punting turnovers, that knocks Markkanen down to number 25 and brings Alperen Şengün up to number 47, which is a much tighter window. Still not nothing, 20 slots basically between the two of them, but not 45. The gap between those two guys in straight 9-cat rankings last year was 48. That's 4 rounds. Şengün obviously has the free throw issue. Yes, I know he's made his free throws during the preseason. I don't care. We've seen Jusuf Nurkic shoot 90% at the foul line. That was during the bubble. Bubble Nurk shot 90% at the foul line, and he hasn't come anywhere remotely close to that since. Like, crazy things happen in 1-2 week spans. Maybe the free throw shooting gets better for Şengün. If it does, then he's the runaway choice in this ADP battle. But that's a big if. Because the thing we know to be true is that Utah's still bad. So odds are Markkanen is going to get some number of weeks at the end of the season off. Again, I don't think he misses 27 ball games again. He missed like 15, 17 games the previous year. And that, in my opinion, is more of the target for Lowry, is to get into that mid-60s range. You're not going to push him too hard, but 55, that's not a full season of work. And then Şengün, he's going to try to play every day. Houston is gunning for the playoffs this year. They feel they're good enough, and frankly, I think they're right. They've got a shot at it. Good a shot as any of those bottom, not bottom teams in the Western Conference, but like outside the top 5, 6, you've got a whole bunch of clubs vying for the last few playoff and the play-in seeds, and the Rockets are in that mix. So Şengün has a target of 82 games this year. Is he going to get there? No, because only a couple of dudes do. But just even the mere idea of trying to play 82 games is a huge deal, because I don't think Markkanen's going to be trying to play 82 games. He's probably going to be trying to play about 70. Does that dozen-game try gap make up for what is a colossal 9-cat gap in actual real-life value? And again, I'm not talking about punt free throw teams. I get it. If you don't care about Şengün's free throw shooting, obviously this changes completely, because Markkanen is a 90%er and Şengün was under 70. But that's not really fair, is it? Say, I don't care about this. I can't rank one guy as if we don't care about what they're weak at, and the other guy as if we do care about what they're weak at. That's not fair. You have to treat them similarly. And if in that case, turnovers is probably the second biggest thing that brings these guys together, because Markkanen is quite good at them and Şengün was semi-bad at them. But Markkanen's not a passer. You could turn off passing. You could turn off shot blocking or assists or steals, or I said assists already, or steals or whatever. You can switch off Lowry's thing, and okay, Şengün's 5 assist to 2 assist gap, now they're suddenly pushed back farther apart again. So, again, ranking, you can tweak these numbers however you want to make it look a little bit better for what you're trying to do. But at the end of the day, and you guys are going to hate this answer, I don't want either of them. Because typically in the third round, unless I, again, have leaned into the free throw punt build, which, by the way, Şengün, great third rounder if you don't care about free throw. Pairs beautifully with Giannis and De'Aaron Fox because you get more assists out of a big man. You're going to have to shore up your three-pointers at some point along the way, but better at steals than blocks. That fits the build because you're going to get a ton of blocks from awful free throw shooting big men in rounds 11 and 12. Obviously he's great in that build. Markkanen, terrific in a roto games cap kind of format because he's likely to blow this 30th ranked out of the water on a per game basis, and you just, you hope that he's not absolutely horrible in games played. But neither one of them really makes sense for a straight 9-cat head-to-head team. Because Şengün has the one bad category, and Markkanen has the shutdown risk hanging over him. I think if you were playing straight head-to-head and you had to pick between one of those two, you probably go Şengün. because, again, odds are he plays a dozen more games than Markkanen this year, and that's enough to make the difference. And if you're playing Games Cap Roto, you probably go Markkanen, but it's so settings dependent, and not every team wants a bad free throw shooter, and certainly nobody in head-to-head wants a guy with a shutdown candidate. So, again, it has to be Şengün by default, but not really a battle that I want anything to do with. Cade Cunningham and Bam Adebayo, the next battle on the board. Bam at 32.2 and Cade at 34.6. This one surprised me because when I was looking at the ADP numbers, I thought, oh, we'll go like Cade Cunningham against Dejounte Murray or something like that, because you got guard versus guard. But as it turns out, Bam is the next dude in ADP, and Cade is the guy after that. Believe it or not, the guy after that is Paolo Banchero, but we're saving Paulo for their own special little battle at the end of today's show. So, how do we think this one's going to go? Over the entirety of last season, Cunningham was not very good. He was number 82. I faded him last year. I feel pretty good about that decision because he also missed 20 games on a Pistons team that was still semi-tanking. However, much like with Jordan Poole, who we faded last year and got that one on the nose, you can't carry that season over season. Someone tweeted at me yesterday, didn't you hate Cade last year? Yeah, but what does that have to do with this year? Literally nothing. Nothing. This is why I don't play a ton of Dynasty. Like, if you're a Dynasty, you have to invest in a guy for a very long term. You have to make a call on what they're going to be, 4 years down the line. I don't like having to do that. I like being able to make my call on a player for a 6-month span and then reset that call on the player. Because I think we all know that Cade is going to be good at some point. My call last year, which made me feel smart in the moment, was I didn't think he was going to be good last year. I didn't think he was ready to take that leap from 90 up to 40 where he was going. Well, guess what? We saw it briefly at the very end of last year. And I know that guys were resting and things were weird and he was playing against defenses that didn't care as much. But Cade finally woke up at the end of last season. And in 8-cat, and again, this is part of the calculus in head-to-head leagues, in 8-cat, he was number 29 down the stretch. It wasn't that many games. It was only like 10 ball games, 10, 15 games. But down the stretch, he was a third rounder in 8-cat. 24 points, 7+ assists. The steals still weren't where I'd want them to be, but great free throw, tolerable field goal percent, pretty good rebounding out of a guard. Maybe not quite as many threes as you may want out of a point guard, but like you can brush that aside a little bit. And so it feels like Cade is finally starting to turn that corner. And for head-to-head, because assists do dry up so early, that makes him an interesting play early on. What about Bam Adebayo? Whoops, I accidentally hit the button, and you guys saw that I end up going with Cade in this one. Bam is also a very, I shouldn't say also, Bam is a very safe play because you know he's going to get you between 50 and 20 points. You know he's going to get you 10 rebounds. You know he's going to get you a steal or more. You know he's going to get you 3 to 4.5 assists on good field goal percent and tolerable free throw percent. He's just a very safe center who tends to play often. Played 71 games last year. He doesn't get beat up as easily as some other guys out there. Not as durable as he was, pre-COVID run and all that stuff, but still a pretty durable dude. However, there just isn't a way, certainly in 8-cat, for Bam to be in front of Cade Cunningham. There just isn't. If you're not worried about turnovers and, barring like a Trae Young, Domantas Sabonis start where you've now collected 7+ turnovers out of your first 2 guys, you might not want to get another 3 turnover dude in the third round because then you're like basically on your way to being the worst in your league at that category. And punting it doesn't mean you need to be 12th. It means you need to not care about it, but it's still nice to win it every once in a while. And not just because you happen to catch a week where your guys aren't playing that much. If you have 1 turnover guy in your first 2 picks, I think Cade is the play here. Now, again, I don't have any real objection to Bam, but I also don't really see a path for him to get to this range. And I get it. Like, you could turn off free throws and he sees a little bump, or you could punt threes and he sees a little bump because he's a center that doesn't hit 3-pointers, but also doesn't block all that many shots. So you sort of end up with like this weird little in between. I like Bam, but I don't think he's worth an early third round pick or a mid third round pick, which is generally where guys like Cade are going. So I lean Cade Cunningham here. Here's a fun one. Two guys with the exact same ADP right now. Jaylen Williams and Jaren Jackson Jr. Exactly 36.4 the ADP on both of these guys. And they get there in two totally different ways. Jaylen Williams last year was number 41 on the season. After a little bit of a slow start, he was low to mid 30s pretty much the entire year from that point on. Jaren Jackson Jr. was number 52 last year after also kind of a slow start. He was like down near 90. He worked his way back up into the 50s and then kind of leveled off there a bit. I can't imagine two guys who have such different pathways to getting to third round possible rank. For Jaylen Williams, it is simply pressing repeat. All he has to do is replicate what he did last year in a situation where, by the way, I think he's going to be expected to do a little bit more, but all he has to do is replicate last year. And that's not to speak of the possibility that his steals get a little bit better, or maybe his usage gets a little bit higher. There's all these ways that Jaylen Williams can be more impactful than last year, but he doesn't have to. All he has to do is repeat to be a third rounder. Get a little better, he's a second rounder. Stay durable, that's another way to get to second round. Jaren Jackson, who, he played as much as you could expect him to play last year, which was get to 65 games and then shut her down. We don't, as much as we can try to predict what we hope Jaren Jackson Jr. becomes this season again, which is basically back to what he was before the Grizzlies had everybody get hurt and JJJ had to be the offensive hub of that team. Go back to blocking 2+ shots a game. Go back to shooting in the high 40s from the field instead of the low to mid 40s. Be an efficient unicorn-style center. Porzingis without the rebounds, that kind of thing. That's what we want. That's how he gets back up into that second round discussion. But I have to admit, I'm a little bit nervous that the field goal percent maybe doesn't come back. Does Ja get him open a bit more? Yeah, probably, but you never know what the year might hold. He wasn't a great field goal percent guy before the one season where he was a better field goal percent guy, so there's no guarantee that sticks. He had the crazy 3-block season, and he's always been a really good shot blocker, but that was also kind of an anomaly in terms of performance. His normal per-minute block rate should have had him probably in the low 2s, which is still very good, but not 3. But what if that doesn't come back? What if the block rate doesn't return? What if the efficiency doesn't return? And the only thing that happens year over year is he just doesn't get to do as much on offense. That's a catastrophe. And I don't know what the odds are that happens. Probably not all that high. 5, 10%, pretty low number. But it's out there in a way that for Jaylen Williams, it's not. Eliminating the injury side. Everybody on the board, every single player has the catastrophic injury way that their season turns sour. But from a just straight statistical production standpoint, I don't see any way that Jaylen Williams' season turns catastrophic statistically. I do see a way that JJJ's season could turn catastrophic statistically. It's small, the chance of it happening, but it's not 0. Call it a coin flip that JJJ beats Jaylen Williams in per game. But we're also talking about a chance that he could fall off a cliff. So on this one, to no one's surprise, I got to go Jaylen Williams. I have to. So I mucked up the numbers a little bit just because I'm trying to go based on more what I'm seeing than what the actual Yahoo ADP board is suggesting. And we're going to go Freddy VanVleet and Dejounte Murray because these ones, even though VanVleet ADP says 38.5, almost every draft I've done, he's gone in the third round. Dejounte Murray's ADP is 35.5. Almost every draft I've seen has seen him go towards the end of the third round also. So call these guys end of third round type battle. And you guys already know which way I'm going. I'm not going to hide my decision from you. There will be no surprise on this one. But the reasoning behind it is mostly just that I have no idea what's going to go on in New Orleans. Dejounte Murray was number 38 last year, which is very close to his ADP. Freddie VanVleet was number 17. And you can point at whatever you want. Oh, VanVleet only scored 17 points per game. Dejounte Murray was at 22.5. Blah, 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 blah. I don't care. I don't care. They both have decent defensive stats. VanVleet actually a little bit better. Freddie, better assists, lower turnovers, better three-pointers, as I recall. And, 8-cat, they move a little bit closer to one another on the board. I get it. I still just prefer the guy that, again, you don't have to be worse at turnovers. You don't have to lose them. Keep that thought in the back of your mind. Admittedly, last year, 8-cat, Freddie was 27, Dejounte was 33. But here's the thing. I keep hearing people on Twitter, YouTube, whatever. They're like, oh, yeah, Freddie VanVleet is going to give up a bunch of his role to the young guys. I don't think so. Because the young guys that could play point guard, Amen Thompson, maybe Reed Shepherd. Reed Shepherd's a rookie. They're not going to trust him to run an offense. I can promise you that. Amen Thompson, who has a slightly better shot of being trusted, can't shoot. They're going to want a guy out there to space the floor a little bit. They're going to want their floor general. I think Freddie VanVleet has a very good shot to just repeat season over season. Steals probably a little higher, blocks probably a little bit lower. The other stuff is not that hard for him to do again. He only took 14 freaking shots a game. It wasn't like he needed a ton of usage to get where he got. He did a little more down the stretch when Şengün was out, but that was like a first-round type of push. What a lot of folks have missed is that Freddie got up into that second-round territory for a spell, even with Şengün healthy. There was a learning curve process at the beginning of the year when Freddie was back near 40-something, but that went away long before Alperen got hurt. With Dejounte Murray, the way that he wins this battle is if he gets back up to 2 steals a game, which I don't think we can bank on. He played 36 minutes a game last year, and he was at 1.4 steals, and getting to 2 is incredibly hard. He's not going to just be the everything guy like he was in San Antonio. Could the assists come up? I mean, they could, but it wasn't like the ball wasn't in his hands in Atlanta. He took a career-high 18.8 shots per game. He had every opportunity to pass and or shoot as much as he wanted to. Trae Young has the ball a lot, but so does the combination of Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, and CJ McCollum. He's going from a place with one guy who had the ball all the time to 3 guys who have the ball quite a bit of the time. There's just less. So if you're banking on sort of one peripheral stat to come leaping back forward by a lot, that's a lot to bank on. So give me Freddie VanVleet. You guys knew that already anyway. And finally, in something of a little bit of a points league kind of battle, Moran at 35 versus Paolo Banchero at 34.6. I don't want either one of these guys in the third round in 9 category leagues. Ja would be closer by a lot in 9 category leagues. And that's kind of where you start your analysis with him. I don't think you can look at what Ja did in his 9 games this past season and make any kind of call on what that actually means for him. I would say go back to the previous year and then just look at Morant in 8-cat. That got him to 51. So if you're talking category leagues, it's Ja Morant in a landslide here. Again, in 9-cat, I'm not drafting either one of these guys in the third round. Not with a 15-foot pole. And I get it. You're going to get a lot of points. You're going to get some assists and rebounds out of Morant, but you're going to get bad percentages. You're going to get low threes and high turnovers. There's too many things that are not strong enough with him to overcome the things that are. Points league, which is probably the reason that these names are in this third round. Although, I mean, I've seen Ja go third, fourth round. I've seen both these guys go third, fourth round, even in category leagues. Let's just put it out there. You probably don't want to take these. You don't want to take Paolo and 9-cat anywhere near this spot. Ja, you could make, again, the argument to take him sort of near here if you're punting turnovers. Okay, that's fine. I can kind of get over it. Points leagues is a little bit of a different monster. Both of these guys have a chance to average 20-plus points, a decent chunk of rebounds, a decent chunk of assists, some steals. I still lean to Ja Morant. I just, like, I think there's just more that he's expected to do. You know, it comes down to just straight usage. Ja Morant, I think, will have slightly higher usage than Paolo Banchero this year. Paulo was at 20 points, 7 boards, 4 assists. Ja beat him in points, threes, assists, steals even, and Paulo won the rebounding battle. But, I mean, in my opinion, the scoring and assist bump that you get out of Ja overcomes whatever you might get out of Paulo, even if he evolves a little bit this year. So points leagues, category leagues, whoever, if you're stuck with this particular choice, points leagues, it's not a bad choice, honestly. Like, these guys should be going in that range. But category leagues, if you had to, this is that old expression, gun to the head kind of thing, you go Ja Morant because he's just going to have the ball in his hands more. And for points leagues, that's ultimately kind of the one main thing that you're looking at when you make that call. Almost everyone that we talked about on this show, I would take over both of those guys in category leagues. Almost everyone. But again, I wanted to toss that in there because it is where these guys are going. And so this is a decision that some of you are being forced to make on your own. And that's your third round ADP battles of the day. Please, again, hit the like button and subscribe, however you're taking in the content. If you have a second, Apple and Spotify in particular, please, please, please hit that 5-star button. On Apple, it's truly helpful if you throw in a one sentence like, oh, I love the pod kind of thing. You don't have to. Obviously, the 5-star itself is the biggest thing, but the written review does help. And thank you all again. The continued growth of this network has been beyond my wildest dreams. Beyond my wildest dreams. I didn't think there was any shot that we might push 4,000 YouTube subs before the season starts. But believe it or not, there is that shot. It's there. It's conceivable. And that's crazy. Because just thinking back to the old place, it took me years to get to, 5,500. And like, we're well on our way to being 75% to that in one fantasy ramp up. So thank you. Your continued support is amazing. I will see you all over on social media. Follow on Twitter at Dan Besbris, Old Man Squad on Twitter, Old Man Squad Fantasy over on Instagram. And we'll be back with you guys tomorrow on Wednesday. Oh, man. Ooh, we're going to get a mock going. I got to get a mock going. But I might try to throw some experts in it. We'll see. We'll see. I'd like to get a few experts in the mock draft. And then it might be time to start the Dan Besbris Buckets. I have no idea how I'm going to title those shows to make them search engine optimized, but we'll figure it out on the fly. For now, peace and love. I'll see you guys in a little bit.